everyone. This is Sabine Dieme. I am here with Tommy Holt Jr., and I'm really excited that he's here and accepted my invitation to come on because a fun fact is that Tommy and I are former colleagues in law enforcement together, City of Miami. And so it is with great honor, that I have him here with us. Tommy, just to give a brief introduction, is a Army veteran. He was also in the U.S. Coast Guard. He spent some time as well, as I mentioned, in law enforcement with the City of Miami. He was also a member of the SWAT team. And he since pivoted into entrepreneurship, where he's a marketing coach. And so we're going to speak with him today about with September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. We want to speak to him about high stress jobs and even as an entrepreneur now, how to sort of manage self-care and to prevent burnout and, the extent where you may find yourself in a very dark place and maybe even considering just areas that we don't want you to be. And so I'm going to go ahead and give it away to Tommy.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm used to calling you Bean. I don't know if that's what you want me to call you.
That's fine. Being Sab is totally cool.
Okay, so yeah, so thank you so much for having me on here and inviting me on here. It's been an honor to be here, and I don't know how many guests you have. I don't know, but I'm glad I'm here and added to the hopefully very very long list of guests that come on here. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and I'm ready to tackle any questions you got for me.
Alrighty. So I wanted to go in and talk a little bit about what we do know, the facts that are out there right now about suicide rates. And so right now in the US, and I kind of looked into what the rates were looking after the pandemic, because the pandemic was such a big, sort of, I don't want to call it a milestone because it wasn't something that was like
Yeah,
a great marker in our history, but it was just something that definitely stood out in
yeah.
history, in recent history. And so in the US specifically, there was actually a slight decline in suicide rates from 2019 to 2020, that first year of the pandemic. And I could only assume that it could be because the pandemic was such a big like interrupter of our lives that it kind of like shifted the focus of people's sort of mentality and mindset. But rates rose again in 2021. And it actually says by 2022, the US saw a 2.6 increase in suicide deaths,
Mm.
reaching approximately 49,000 deaths, which was the highest number ever recorded in the US.
Wait, a
Mhm.
U.S. Wow.
Right. In the US. And then the rate climbed, it said back to 14.4 deaths per 100,000 people after the temporary decline during the early pandemic. Globally, the trends in other countries have varied, right? Some nations experience increase, while especially among younger people, which makes perfect sense because what we found is that in the pandemic, people had to stay indoors, and so they had a cutoff of connections, uh, physical or, like in-person connections with others, where they had a choice before, it wasn't a choice at that point. Um, so especially in marginalized communities, it says, and factors such as economic hardships, social isolation, like I mentioned, and mental health struggles exacerbated during the pandemic. Um, so obviously, again, this is Suicide Prevention Month. We want to shine light on that. And so this is why it was important for me to invite Tommy in so that he can talk from a military veterans perspective as well as law enforcement. Um, we'll go into the first question. as you pivoted into these different areas, these different careers, Coast Guard, Army, SWAT, and now entrepreneurship, how has each of those experiences shaped your understanding of both mental health and resilience, particularly when faced with uncertainty?
Yeah, I think just like anything that is, when pressure is applied to something, you kind of get used to that pressure, right? And there was an interesting statistic that stood out to me when we were police officers, that the average police officer, after they retire, think about this, they work 20, 25 years, they retire, their life expectancy is only 5 to 15 years after that, meaning that they typically die within 5 to 15 years after their retirement. And when I heard that, I was like, I need to get up out of here because I'm not working 20, 25 years to only get 5 to 10, right? And so the reason for that, so we have to think about this. I have another friend that I'd really like to talk about. I won't say his name, but he struggles with this. He's struggled with suicide and depression. He was also in the military. We joined together actually at the same time. We joined the Army at the same time. We did and operated in certain ways, and it affected him. But he also transitioned to a high stress career where he was working as a longshoreman in New Jersey at the port. And he's working, I don't know if you see those big cranes that they're like, I don't know, 30, 40 feet off the ground. And I don't know if anybody knows about longshoremen, that there's pretty much every year, there's a couple people that die on the port because, things tip over or people get crushed. And so there's a lot of pressure and they work a lot of hours. Their life expectancy is the same. 5 to 10 to 15 years after they retire, they die. And so that probed me to start thinking, okay, why does this happen? And so if you really think about it, you're used to this pressure and this routine of day to day. I wake up at this time, especially at police officers, we have, certain times we have roll call, or you're in the military, or you have these jobs where they say, you can't be late. You have to be here at a certain time, and you're there, and that's the pressure that's applied to you every single day. You're seeing things, you're hearing things, you're experiencing things with all your 5 senses that most people don't have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then all of a sudden, one day that's gone, right? And it's like, okay, what do I do with myself now? Like I'm not used to this. When I transitioned out of the police department, I was used to, there's different type of police officers. I was the kind of police officer that, I'm out there trying to help my community. So I'm not just sitting in the car and falling asleep. Nothing wrong with that every once in a while, right? We all need a little bit of rest. But I'm out there actively patrolling, right? Because I want peace. At least if I can bring a little bit of peace to the community that I'm supposed to protect and serve, that's what I want to do. And so when I got out, I was like, dang, like I craved it, right? But it's not just craving mentally, right? They have to understand that there are chemicals that are produced in our body when we have that fight or flight type of response that we're no longer getting. It's no different than someone who's hooked on drugs. Now all of a sudden, cold turkey, you snatch that away from them and they don't have it anymore, right? And so what studies have shown, people have realized, is that, wow, this transition out of these high stress jobs where this stress was applied on me and I had to cope with it internally, not just mentally, but emotionally, but spiritually, physically, all the things that I had to do that I've been doing for 25 years in this one specific profession. Now, all of a sudden, that's all stripped away from me. My body says, hey, we're supposed to be at work today. You're supposed to be in a car chase. You're supposed to be chasing after someone. Why aren't these endorphins pumping like they used to be pumping? Why isn't the dopamine there like it's supposed to be there? And it starts to crave these things. And next thing you know, you don't understand why you're not feeling like yourself. You're like, oh, I don't feel like I'm supposed to just be sitting around. And these people end up starting to slowly but surely become this sedative lifestyle, but producing the same amount of dopamine and epinephrine and all those other things, those chemicals that go in your body, and they're not using it, and they just feel like they're going crazy, and they feel like they can't handle the stress of the normal stress of life because they've been used to this other thing for so long. Coping with that is very difficult. In the military, before you get out, I forgot what the acronym is called, but it's basically about a week-long school essentially that they force you to go through. And they talk about these things and they talk about how to adjust. And so it's not a one size fit all thing. And it's something that's, very difficult to put in one box for one person to say, hey, this is what I do. But I think it's important, number one, to have an outlet that you can talk with someone that you can relate with. Um, and we could talk about a couple other things that I personally have done later on, that have helped me. But coping with it is something, it's a very difficult thing. And it's something that a lot of people don't even take in consideration.
Wow. Wow. And from what you were saying, it sounds like, you have all this energy that you're used to, applying it to somewhere, used to putting it to use, and now it's just, kind of like
Well,
in dormant
mhm.
inside of you. And so, um, this is a little kind of off topic, but because you went from I mean, not really so much off topic, you went from military and into law enforcement. And I'm kind of wondering because you talk about this energy, and these, hormones and all these things that you have, in you and that your body is used to responding to. Was that like an intentional decision to go from military to law enforcement because of maybe on some level because of that reason?
It wasn't for that reason. It was because when I went from the Army first, where I was a combat medic and a nurse in the Army. And then I transitioned out of that and went directly into the Coast Guard. I had to go to boot camp again and work my way up. And I eventually got into, uh, I decided that I wanted to do uh, counterterrorism, anti-terrorism, because of 9/11. I was there for 9/11 at the Pentagon, and um, as a medic. And I decided, that had a really big impact on me. And I didn't want to sit and wait. And I hate to say it like this, but I was mad, and I wanted to inflict some, I wanted to do what they did to us, right?
Okay.
Um, and so when I joined the Coast Guard, they came up with these brand new teams, and these teams were counterterrorism teams. It was completely different from what the Coast Guard has ever done before. Coast Guard was a life-saving service. Now they were implementing people to be life-taking service, for specific missions, where anywhere that there was a port. And so that journey, long story short, that journey kind of took me into the law enforcement side, because the difference between the Coast Guard and the military, we're not a part of DOD. We're part of the Department of Homeland Security. And so for us to do law enforcement, we have to be, for us to do our job, we have to be federal law enforcement officers. So we go through a federal law enforcement training at FLETC. And that was my introduction into law enforcement. By doing that, we mostly operate on maritime law, which is international law. It was like a back door for us to circumvent some laws legally, international laws. Just kind of like when we were police officers, we can do ride-alongs, right? And you
Okay.
could bring anybody on along. Well, when maritime law states that as a Coast Guard federal law enforcement officer, I can go on a boat that has course and speed into the United States, even though they're not technically in United States waters.
Mm.
And I choose to have a ride along with, some of my buddies that just so happen to be Navy SEALs. They just so happen to be Special Forces guys. Um, and we can go on that boat legally,
Okay.
without it being a act of war. If it was a DOD, if it was the Navy SEALs, um, if they're the same team but they went underneath the Navy SEALs, that would be an act of war, right? Because it would be a U.S. foreign flag boat going on another U.S. flagged, boat. And so that whole process of learning, okay, this is how international law works. It just triggered something to me and said, I want to do law enforcement and I want to kind of do this in my own community. and be able to serve the people in my own community. So I did that for a number of years, and that kind of pushed me to it.
So, I mean, you kind of touched on it in your response, but like looking into the next question, it was about high stake careers, right? We already know that, you touched on law enforcement, military service, um, and you even said that you had your own sort of, I guess, go to things that you do on your own to like stay above float, right? To self-care and to cope with all of the different challenges that come with the career. But we know, right, not only being so military and law enforcement are both sort of male dominated. It's like an alpha male type of, environment. And so things like mental health can be not only overlooked, but stigmatized. So I'm wondering, like, because you did mention that military, once you leave, they have sort of a training when you leave. And I'm wondering if that was ever something that was, sort of this training, if there was ever any emphasis throughout your time in military. I know um, it's not so much in law enforcement, but was there ever a time in military that it was stressed upon you to maybe go see a counselor, a therapist, anyone that could help you sort of deal with the coping mechanisms outside of what you did on your own?
Not not really. It was only after certain incidents, like just like if you get a shooting
Right.
on the police, oh, you gotta go see the shrink now. And even that word shrink is kind of like a derogatory type of, hey, you gotta go see the shrink, right? But there was nothing forced to say, hey, you have to go talk to these people. You have to go talk to someone. And you're absolutely right. It's a very male alpha testosterone driven type of a thing, and it's like, oh, you can't handle the pressure. And that's part of the problem, especially with men, because I do believe still to this day, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have more men commit suicide than women. And it's interesting to know how the suicides occur. It kind of tells you about the mentality of what's going on. A lot of women won't really shoot themselves in the head or in the face. They'll typically do something to their heart. Men typically go straight to the head, or they jump. And it's interesting to see the dynamics of that and understand, you know, as why that happens, right? And men, we tend to hold our feelings inside because we're supposed to be the strong ones. We're supposed to be the providers and the protectors, and we're not supposed to cry, and we're not, and all these things that we've been taught as children, and we internalize, right? And so like I said, a close friend of mine, he's still battling through it. And thank God he's on the other side of this now. But yeah, he saw a lot of things when he went to Iraq. A lot of things that you wish you never ever see again. I wish you never seen in the first place. And it messes with you. And everybody handles those things different. And it's wrong for us to judge how you handle things. Like, he saw incidents of little kids where they literally had to run them over because they were told, hey, don't stop, because these kids are coming out and they're strapped with bombs, and you're in a truck. And he's not driving the truck, but he's in the truck, and he's like, yo, that's a little kid in the road. And they're like, yeah, we know. We're told not to stop. Yeah, but that's a little kid. Like, we need to, like, no, they're putting kids in the road and they're blowing us up. We got to go. How do you think about that? Like, how do you go home and sleep after that? And that, even when you think about it, it's like you still don't get the full breadth of what that feels like, what the smell was. Like, he remembers all of that, okay? And he has to deal with those memories constantly. And so, having an outlet to be able to talk to someone openly and honestly about it, and not be afraid to cry, not be afraid to really pour out your emotions, to get it all out, and not just do it one time. Like, I talk to him. He's one of my best friends. I talk to him on a regular basis, right? Not just for that reason. Most of the time we're laughing and joking, but especially when I see I haven't heard from him in a couple of days. And I'm like, oh, you know, this is, he needs the medicine now, right? He needs to laugh. He needs to be able to talk. He needs to be able to be emotional. He needs to be able to do these things. He needs that safe space to be able to do that. And, just unfortunately, a lot of men are machismo, right? Like the Cubans call it. We don't allow that space to happen. And it's something that we just need to continue to work on.
Wow, I love what you said, even the machismo, bringing that up because you're actually number two guest. This is a very new podcast. You're number two guest on the podcast. The first episode, or the first guest, rather, was someone who she calls herself the friendship guru or the friendship coach. And so the whole episode was talking about how friendships can affect your mental health. And, we both kind of cater more towards women. But as we were going through the conversation, I started thinking about my husband. And I was saying how sometimes, I guess because of societal pressures, he doesn't want to open up about certain fears that he may have. And, I was telling her I would love for him to feel comfortable enough with me to just, know that he can, open up whenever, those type of fears come up. And she said, I think while you're there and your support is great, men need other men to open up to. So the fact that you have your friend and your friend have you as a support system is awesome, especially knowing that you guys have shared experiences. And I also want to take the time, and I should have thought of this before, but to say thank you, especially after September 11th, for your services and those who were with you on September 11th, and just, all the time that you have put to serve our country. And of course, and so I want to, move on and say that as someone, who has worn multiple hats, we talked again about how you were in the military, in the Army, Coast Guard, and law enforcement, and now pivoting into entrepreneurship and doing all of that while also being a family man. How do you maintain balance, right, around mental health and your well-being through such diverse but also demanding roles?
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that's probably a little controversial. I don't believe in balance, and nor do I want balance. And I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that nobody wants balance. Everybody, when you think about your dream life, you don't think about working 40 hours and then relaxing with your family for 40 hours. You think about your dream life as endless vacations, being able to do what you want with the people that you want and love, right? You don't think about balance, right? And so there's this myth. I really believe it's a myth, and I think it's done on purpose so that people seek the wrong direction. Let me find balance. Nothing is balanced. When you were in the police academy, your life was not balanced, but you did that for a short amount of time to have a better result on the back end, right? And so everything, when you go to school, you go to college, a relationship, right? We got to pour a lot of time into a relationship to make that relationship bloom. Anything in life, there's always going to be times where you have to put more effort into that. And automatically, once you do that, by the definition, life is now unbalanced. And so the first thing we have to tackle is understanding that being balanced is unreasonable. And it's not a goal to even try to achieve. What you should be trying to achieve, in my opinion, is putting together and piecing together like a puzzle the life that you desire, and understanding that there are peaks and valleys and there's phases of that journey. And once you have, here's the hard part, here's the difficult part. Once you have the puzzle together, okay, so you got the picture, you say, okay, I personally did this. I said, I want to have a life where I travel, and not just travel, but I want to be able to travel and do nice long vacations at least once every 3 months. Okay, what is that going to look like for me? I really went into detail, okay? Because some people will do this and they'll be like, oh, I want to go to Croatia. There's a place I want to go to, right? I want to go to Croatia. they're like, okay, cool, let's go to Croatia. They don't look up flights. They don't look up hotels. They don't look up the restaurants, how much it's going to cost. They don't look up none of those things. It's just this abstract idea. So, like I said, this is one of my things that I do in this book. I write down exactly what I want, right? Exactly what I want. I have a perfect day in there that is about 35 pages of handwritten. From the very time I open my eyes to what I smell, what I taste, everything is laid out, okay? Exactly how I want my entire day to go. And people don't take the time to do those things. And so therefore there's this abstract idea. So we have to understand that we have to have a crystal picture. And then the hard part about it is once the pieces are together and you have this crystal clear picture, is to not focus all of your time on the end result of the picture. Focus on the first piece. And I promise you, I've done this entrepreneur thing now. I've worked for myself, earned my own money without anybody else since I left the police department as a contractor in 2011. And so I've been earning my own income from now for about November, it will be 13 years. And so in the beginning, I was always focused on the money, right? That's the end goal for me. As a business owner, it's like, oh, I need to make this amount of money. And you're focusing on the end result instead of focusing on the process of becoming something so that you can get the end result. This is why lottery winners typically end up losing all their money because they have $1 million, but they haven't become millionaires. There's a difference.
Mindset.
Right? It's a lifestyle. It's who you become. Like, you can't be anything else but you. Right? This is who you are. Like how you are, your mannerisms, like, everything from your height to how you treat people. Right? That's who you are. And that's why they say, I want to be a millionaire. People forget that B part. They just want to go to the millionaire. They just want to go to the dollar figure. But in order to do that, it's not a dollar figure in a bank account. That is you becoming something. Or you want to be, the world's best podcaster, right? If you want to do that, you have to become that person. And a lot of times we focus on the end goal and we don't focus on the process of being. And then once you do that for so long, that becomes the new routine. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, wow, I am that. Like, I am what I wrote down in this book. I'm experiencing what I did because I practiced on not just on the end goal, but I focused on actually becoming it. And when you do that, what that does, what it's done for my friend, what it's doing for me, what it's doing for a lot of people that actually buy into that, is now your attention is taken off of, man, I don't have enough for the rent for this month. Or, wow, like my girlfriend or my wife just, left me. Well, when you have this perfect picture of what you want, very crystal clear picture of what you want, and you're focused on being, yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, it's going to bother you, but you've now put the pieces in place that allows you to circumvent those things, that allows you to get around those things and break through those barriers, because you're now becoming that vision of what you want it to be, right? And so that's something for me that has really been very helpful. Is like, not always, like, I need to have a goal, I need to make it clear, but after I have that, I know it's there, I read it, I remember it, I know it's there, but now what are all the steps? There might be 10, 20, 30 steps for me to get to that point. Okay, let me focus on step one and let me be that. Let me master step one, and then I move on to step two. And as I put those pieces together, I become a better person in that.
As you were speaking, I thought about the founder of Shea Moisture. I heard him in a talk not long ago, and he said there's no such thing as work-life balance. So, perfectly in line with what you said, he said what he decided a very long time ago was to achieve work-life harmony. And so what he does is, in his business, he just try to find ways to include his family and include the different parts of his life so that they can coexist together. And
Mhm.
so everything that you said is like perfectly aligned with that. And it makes much sense because, even when you talk about writing things down, I was reminded by a Bible verse that says exactly that, write it down to make it plain. And it just, going back to the question, it kind of just tells me that when it comes to, sort of doing this self-care and coping with the challenges of life, it's kind of going back to your purpose, finding what your purpose is, finding what it is that that you want out of life and what would make you happy. And then just constantly reminding yourself, okay, if I want this, now what do I have to do to get from where I am today and where I want to be?
Right.
And it just kind of helps you to stay on track and just keep your mind and your life clear and set to reach that goal.
Yeah, and you know what? You said something about like, I think especially now, right? I'm not even gonna ask you, I don't know how old you are. I'm 43, right? So I don't know, you know, but I think back to, being younger and I'm like, man, times have really changed. We're in a stage like my generation is in that stage where we remember when the internet first came out, like the whole the first little
Mhm.
dial-up joint, AOL, right? So we remember internet starting up and what we have now. We remember pre-social media and what we have now. And my kids now, I think, like, man, they have it tough because they're being bombarded with social media, bombarded with YouTube and things that they see, and they want this now, want that, and that forever, never-ending wheel of chasing. You said happiness, right? Because there's a difference between happiness and joy, right? And so when you start to chase joy, it's different than happiness. Happiness is fleeting. Happiness, my son, uh, 2 weeks ago, calling me, Dad, I want this skateboard. I want this skateboard, $180 skateboard. I want this skateboard. Buying the skateboard. Talked to him this morning. Hey, what's going on with the skateboard? Oh, I haven't really been using it. But in the meantime, that was happiness for him. Like, man, as soon as he got that skateboard, he was happy, right? And so we have to understand that, like, happiness is fleeting. I'm not chasing happiness because if that was the case, I'd do everything and anything that I want, and I'd focus on this one thing today because that makes me happy, and then I focus on this tomorrow because that makes me happy. But like you said, purpose and joy, what is going to fulfill me long term? And we have to make that distinction. Like even in this season of life that I'm in now, I used to want, you know, big 7,000 square foot home and, these mansions. I want to live here. And now I'm like, man, why did I want that? I asked myself, okay, why? Why do I want a 7,000 square foot home? Like, what do I want that for? Like, I realized that I really didn't want that for me. I actually like, to be honest with you, and people can hate it, I actually like the tiny house like little movement. I like
And
compact living. I keep it clean, and I can pack up and I can travel the world. Right? I'd rather spend my money going to go visit somewhere or travel somewhere with friends and family than on a house that's half empty most of the time. Um, but if having a 7,000 square foot thing brings you joy and that's your purpose to have that for whatever reason, by all means do that. But at least differentiate what's bringing me happiness, what's bringing me joy, and always lean more on, or I wouldn't say always, but most of the time lean more towards focusing on that and going towards the joy.
wow. And you mentioned your daughters, and like kind of being in this sort of generation where all they knew, or from the very beginning they had the internet. And so it's almost like it's hard to figure out where does my ideas of happiness and joy begin and where do they end, because there's so much influence telling us this is what you should want, this is what you need. you know
Like, it really is it? Whose idea is it? Really your idea, or is it someone
right,
else's idea that impregnated it into you? Right?
right. So yeah, so we got to go back to I guess the basics, to kind of learn the basics of life, but also the basics, meaning like find out who you are, so that
Mm.
when those challenges come and when because they're gonna come, so when those challenges come in life and you're feeling like hopeless, you can go back to the very basics of who you are.
how do we find out, what are some practical tips for us to find out who we truly are?
Well, you mentioned the book. So writing. For
Mm,
me, I'll be honest, in the mental health space especially, they talk a lot about journaling. That is not the best for me. What I found has been best is talking. And so, and then I don't have to be talking to another person. So what I like to do is sort of like audio journal, where I just speak out, whatever comes to mind and do like a dump, because to get to know yourself, right, you have to, peel back those layers and find out, okay, is this original thought? Yeah, or is this thought an original thought? Going back to the 7,000 square foot house, is this something that I really want? Is it something that I need? Why do I want it? I think it's doing those sort of things. Um,
that's good. I do an audio. Well, probably looks crazy because I just talk to myself. I don't, but I never thought about actually recording
Recording.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To go actually go back later on and look at and see the transition. I think also um, I've learned to do a lot of meditating and manifesting, and I think a lot of times, growing up in a Christian household, you hear that. In some Christian households, they hear that and they're like, "Oh, manifest like, well, that's that hocus pocus stuff, right?" And it's not. Even Jesus, in the Bible talks about meditating and manifesting, um, and he did it often. And so, but in that process, almost this is what I do, and this is what I've heard from a couple different people. Dr. Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you've heard about him. He has a really interesting book called Becoming Supernatural, and he describes becoming your awareness. So sitting there, closing your eyes, um, and imagine that you're just in this void, this empty space. There's no body, there's no legs, there's no arms, there's no head. There's just your awareness, right? And once you can get to that state of just being, okay, I'm just aware, I'm closing my eyes, I'm aware of the spatial difference between where I'm currently thinking I am in space and the wall here and where you're at, and just being aware. And then trying to picture your body in space, okay, as it sits. So I'd be maybe picturing looking at myself down and being aware of my posture and being aware of what that looks like, and then dive deeper into being aware of what I'm thinking. And when you do that, you start to strip away some of the things that society has dumped on you. And you say, like, you have that space now. At least this is what I do. I feel like I have that space to say, okay, why am I feeling this way? A perfect example. I'm I'll be launching another company next year here in the Philippines, and it's centered around trading. So I haven't really made it too public, but I've been practicing and working on being a futures trader. So I trade gold, right? And I do pretty well with that. And with that comes a lot of emotion. I never thought it was going to be this hard. I
Okay.
never thought 2.5 years into it, and I'm still like, you learn so much about, like, damn, I'm really greedy. Like, wow, I'm really impatient. It's a very difficult thing to do, and that's why a very small percentage of the people master it and become successful with it. But it gives you this really gut check, because it's like, you're not supposed to do something, you do it anyway because of greed or because of fear or because of whatever. And so by doing this, practicing what I just spoke, just the other day, I was like, okay, I'm about to do this. I'm about to get it. I'm about to buy. And I caught myself. My awareness was like, hold up, let me look at you. Okay, why do you want to do this? This goes against everything that you have in your plan. And I was able to say, oh wow, I was able to catch myself. And when you do that, you give yourself a little mini round of applause, right? And you remember what that feels like to catch yourself before you fall, so that the next time you start to trip up, you can do that. And the greats are the ones that do that over and over again, until the point where it looks like they never mess up. It's like, wow, Steph Curry always hits the shot. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He misses a lot. But he doesn't remember the misses. He catches himself say, "Oh, that was a miss," but you know what? I'm on to the next one, right?
At a
And
great.
the great, yeah, that's how they do, and that's how they operate. And it's the same thing with anything in life. Anything in life.
Awesome, awesome. So, one of my very good friends, she's actually my daughter's godmother, and she went through this sort of, I don't know, she went through this phase where she just had enough with her 9 to 5. She took off and went for a few months to live in Africa and just kind of like unplug, disconnect. And she came back and she's training actually as a trader as well. And she was telling me, she said, you would be like blown away with how the parallels between like learning this trade and life, all the parallels. She was like, you just start to unlock so many different just gems, in learning that. And it's exciting to hear that you're doing it as well. And maybe I should do it too. I don't know. But I told her when you master it, I'm coming to you, so
You
so
should. I honestly think everybody should at least learn that skill because it gives you, the reason why I chose it is because my other businesses, they're all people related, right? If you're going to come into my business, I got to rely on you being there. I got to rely on you paying. I rely on that you don't do a chargeback, right? All these things. But this is you in the market, and you learn a ton about yourself. I know that this is not what the purpose of this
right, right.
it is in a sense because it taught me a lot about who I am, you know. So it's an interesting journey for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So you know, just in all these questions, we touch on a lot of the ones to come, but uh the next question that I had was in relation to law enforcement and military again, when it comes to the idea that these sort of careers, they have a lot of pride, right? There's a lot of pride in place. And then, the idea of the protector, not only for men, but just men and women in these fields, they have the protector role. Did you ever find it difficult to reach out to people? So, to reach out for help, to reach out for support. And if so, what changed for you when you finally decided, okay, I need help or I need to get extra support outside of myself?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You know, there's been times where like I've like cried because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I went from here to then. I'll be open about this. I'm currently still going through a divorce, but it's been a journey of not just emotional issues, but also financial, right? Because that's very, very, and a lot of men struggle with this. A friend of mine who went through a divorce a long time ago. He was on the verge of suicide because it's something that is a very difficult thing to explain, especially if you were in the positions that I and he was, where we were the ones that got, cheated on. But at the end of the day, I have to give half of my stuff away. It's like, hold on, I can't see my kids as much as I'm used to because you did something wrong and I have to pay for it now. And it's a difficult thing to go through. And he was on the verge of making a big mistake, and I was there for him. It's just weird how it worked out during that time frame. I was there for him, and then when I was going through it, he knew exactly how I felt because he was there too. And going through that transition, it's a very, very difficult thing, man, because it's something that's just like, man, I thought I was doing everything right. I've worked and busted my butt to get to the point where I'm at, and now I have this setback. And I was watching a podcast a while ago, and the guy was saying, he was like, but if you think about it, because the problem is that we think that, man, this is all gone now, right? I had 5 houses. I had a house for each one of my kids, and I had to get rid of those houses, right? And she didn't do anything to earn those houses. Like, no income was provided, no help was provided
Wow.
to that. That was all extra stuff, that extra work that I did. That was me sleeping in houses that didn't have electricity so I could save money, so I could do my own work. None of that didn't help with any of that. But when you invest that that amount of time, and that's all stolen from you, essentially, it's very difficult to process. And so, you go through these moments where we feel like, man, I'm never going to get that back. And like I said, I was watching this podcast, and you said, when you think about it, every time you had a rough part in life, you always had enough. If you really think about it, it might not be enough to buy the Bugatti. It might not be enough to buy the 7,000 square foot home, but you're here. You're at this moment. So at this moment, me and you, at this moment in time, we are both here. And if you think about your life, in your darkest moments, you always had enough to get you here. Right? I'm 43 years old. I don't know how many days that is. If you were to do 365 times 43, that's a lot of days of always having enough. What are the chances that tomorrow I don't have enough? It's a better chance that I have enough for tomorrow than it is that I don't. And if you just think about it like that, it's like, wow, I've always had enough. I've always had enough up until this point. So what's the chances I won't have enough till tomorrow, and the day after that, and the week after that, and the month after that? And when we're going through these dark times where we want to do stupid things, right? I was going to do something really stupid, right? Really, very, very dumb. And it would have ruined her life, my kids' life, my family's life. And, to understand, to have someone that I could reach out to that had felt that, has actually felt, not just in theory, didn't just read about it in a book, but actually really understood, hey man, this is what and I wasn't in Atlanta. He was in Miami. Hey man, hey, you need, I'm on the next flight. To have someone like this that understands it, like, that's so powerful, And it's something that I think that, as men, we have to be receptive enough to receive. Like, there's been times where my friends have said, hey, when I was going through some financial difficulty, and they were like, hey man, I got you. What do you need? I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. My pride is like, nah, man, I got it on my own, because you never want to be seen as that guy that's taking, but being vulnerable enough to say, yeah, I need some help, man. I need some help. I'm struggling. Like, I just been eating crackers for the last month, that I need some help. To be able to be vulnerable about and open it, you got to have that bond with that person to be able to do that. Yeah.
Wow. So I guess knowing who's been there for you, or who's I guess people that you've had shared experiences with are safe enough to open up and ask for support. And that can be tricky for a lot of us. But sometimes it's just, trusting the process and knowing that in your 43 years, like you mentioned, and me 39, that, if there was provision all those years leading up to this point, then you're going to be fine no matter what you're going through. And I've been through some dark times myself, not the same, but I do understand the feeling of thinking like, this is it, or feeling like, how do I come back from this? And really that's the purpose, not just for this conversation, but for this podcast, is to kind of give people the encouragement that you can truly come back from anything. And it's just, having the awareness that there are people around, whether it's really the ability or the willingness to want to open up and receive what's out there, because the support is out there for you. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. We're now at 1:00. But I definitely appreciate all the time that you've given, and just the vulnerability of you opening up in ways that I wouldn't even have imagined in this conversation. Thank you so much again for your prior service, and even what you're doing now to inspire people like myself, to just sort of think outside of the box and take control of your life, because you really can do it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank
Yeah, I
you.
appreciate it so much for having me on here. I'm proud to be your second guest. A little jealous that I wasn't the first, but it's all right. I'm quite sure
The
she was
first
amazing.
man, the first man.
First, okay, cool, cool. I'll take
Yeah.
that.
All
All
righty.
right.
Take care and have a good one.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye.